She only wanted someone to talk to. But when 8-year-old Emily's call reached the city's most feared mafia boss, a single mistake set love, danger, and redemption on a collision course. The late afternoon sun spilled lazily through the blinds of a small, weathered house on the edge of town. Dust floated in the golden light, settling across worn furniture that had seen better years. In the living room, a young girl named Emily Carter sat cross-legged on the carpet, her stuffed bear perched beside her. Emily was 8 years old, too young to understand the dangers of the world, but old enough to feel its absences. Her mother, Laura, worked long shifts at a nearby diner, leaving Emily to craft adventures from toys, drawings, and the company of her bear, Captain Buttons. Her father had left when she was just a toddler, disappearing into silence. Emily only knew him from pictures tucked away in a shoebox that Laura tried, unsuccessfully, to hide. Emily pressed Captain Buttons against her chest. "What do you think, Captain?" she whispered. "Do you think Mommy's going to be late again?" The bear, of course, said nothing. But in Emily's mind, he always had answers, silly, comforting answers. Still, even imaginary voices couldn't fill the ache of waiting for someone to come home. The small house was quiet, the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the old wall clock ticking too loudly. Emily sighed and wandered toward the counter where an old black landline phone sat. It looked heavy and mysterious, unlike the phones her friends at school had. She ran her fingers over the cord, tracing the ridges absent-mindedly. "What if we called someone Captain?" she said, her voice carrying the lilt of mischief. "Not Mommy. Just anyone." Her eyes lit up. For Emily, the phone wasn't just a machine, it was a door. A door that could open into voices, stories, maybe even friendship. Miles away, in the heart of the city, another world pulsed, darker, sharper, and far less forgiving. In a sprawling penthouse office overlooking the skyline, Vincent Moretti leaned back in a leather chair, the faint glow of the city bleeding through the tall glass windows. The air smelled faintly of smoke and expensive scotch. Vincent was in his 40s, though the years of violence and power made him appear older. His jaw was sharp, his eyes a steely gray, and his presence carried weight, the kind of weight that silenced rooms. Around him, men in tailored suits stood waiting, afraid to breathe too loudly. On the table before him lay files, photographs, and stacks of money. Business as usual. Deals to finalize. Threats to neutralize. Empires to maintain. But behind the facade of control, Vincent carried an emptiness he never spoke of. The long dining table in his estate remained set for two, though he always ate alone. The quiet moments of the night pressed on him hardest, when memory brought back the face of a little girl he once knew, his daughter, Sophia, taken by illness years ago. He poured himself a drink, his hand steady but his mind restless. His men were talking numbers, alliances, betrayals. Vincent's mind was elsewhere, always elsewhere. "Boss?" one of his men asked hesitantly. "Did you hear me?" Vincent's eyes lifted slowly. He didn't answer right away. He didn't need to. The silence alone was enough to make the man swallow his words. Power was easy. Control was survival. But love? Love had been stripped away long ago. Back in the small house, Emily sat on the counter now, legs swinging as she pressed the cold receiver of the landline to her ear. The dial tone hummed. She giggled. "Who should we call, Captain?" she whispered, pretending the bear was plotting with her. "Maybe a friend." Her tiny fingers danced across the buttons, pressing numbers at random. No plan, no thought, just play. Somewhere in the city, a secure line buzzed. A line reserved for only the most urgent of conversations. Vincent's personal line. The phone rang once. His men glanced at each other, confused. The boss's direct line was rarely used, never by accident. Vincent frowned, reached forward, and picked up the receiver. "Moretti," he said, his voice low, edged with command. Emily froze. The voice was deep, unfamiliar, and frightening. Her heart fluttered in her chest. "Hello," she stammered. Vincent's eyes narrowed. The voice was high-pitched, trembling. "A child? Who is this?" he asked, suspicion sharpening his tone. Emily's throat went dry. This is Emily." His men watched his expression shift, confusion, calculation. To a man like Vincent, nothing happened by mistake. Every call, every word, meant something. "Emily who?" His tone darkened. Emily gripped Captain Buttons tighter. I think I dialed the wrong number." Silence stretched, heavy, suffocating. Vincent's men tensed. Wrong number? Or a message coded in innocence? Vincent's lips pressed into a thin line. He ended the call with a click, his jaw tight. Emily sat frozen, staring at the phone in her hand, her heart racing. That was weird, she whispered to her bear, trying to laugh it off. But her small body trembled. She had no idea that her silly game had just pulled her into the orbit of the city's most dangerous man. And outside her little home, the night grew colder. The phone call ended with a sharp click, leaving Emily staring at the receiver in her trembling hand. Her small chest rose and fell quickly, her heartbeat drumming so loudly she could hear it in her ears. Captain Buttons, she whispered, squeezing her bear. That wasn't funny. That man sounded scary. She carefully set the phone back in its cradle, trying to shake off the fear. Maybe it had just been a stranger, nothing more. People got wrong numbers all the time. But the truth gnawed at her. His voice wasn't ordinary. It carried weight, like the way a storm fills the air before it breaks. Emily forced herself to move, padding to the living room. She turned on the TV, the cartoons flashing too brightly. She hoped the colors and laughter would drown out the strange voice still echoing in her head. Miles away, Vincent Moretti sat in his office, the receiver still resting in its cradle, his expression unreadable. A child, one of his men ventured carefully. Vincent didn't look up. He poured another glass of scotch, the liquid amber in the dim light. There are no accidents. Not in this city. Boss, maybe it was. Vincent's eyes snapped toward the man. The rest of the sentence died in his throat. Trace it, Vincent ordered. His voice was low, steady, dangerous. Now. The men hurried. Within minutes, the phone call's origin appeared on the screen of a laptop. A modest suburban address. A name, Carter. Vincent leaned forward, staring at the name. Carter. Not one he recognized. Not from the underworld, not from his enemies. But his gut told him otherwise. No one calls me by mistake, he muttered. He stood, slipping on his tailored coat. Send the cars. The street outside Emily's home was usually quiet by evening. A few porch lights flickered on. The neighborhood dogs barked occasionally, and the hum of crickets filled the air. But that night, something shifted. It started as a distant rumble, a vibration Emily could feel through the floorboards. She turned off the TV and looked toward the window. Headlights. Dozens of them. One by one, sleek black cars rolled into her street, their engines low and menacing. The neighbors' curtains twitched. Lights flicked on in nearby homes as people peeked out, confusion and fear mixing in whispers. Emily pressed her nose to the glass, wide-eyed. Captain Buttons. What's happening? The cars didn't stop at the neighbors' houses. They slowed, turned, and parked along the curb directly outside hers. Doors opened in unison, men in dark suits stepping out, their movements sharp and purposeful. Emily's little heart raced. She stumbled back from the window, clutching her bear so tightly her fingers ached. Inside the house, the door rattled. A knock. Not loud, not frantic, but heavy, deliberate. Emily froze. The knock came again, deeper this time. She whispered, "Mommy, please come home soon." At the edge of the driveway, Vincent stepped out of the lead car. The night air was crisp, the scent of gasoline, and asphalt mixing with the faint sweetness of someone's backyard roses. His men fanned out silently, scanning shadows, guarding. Vincent's gaze fell on the small house. Faded paint, a cracked porch light, curtains drawn tight. It didn't scream danger. It screamed poverty, struggle, ordinary life. But the voice on the phone. Vincent moved forward, his footsteps measured. His men watched him carefully, as if the ground itself might shift under his command. He reached the porch and raised his hand. Knocked. Waited. Inside, Emily backed further into the living room, her little legs stumbling over the carpet. She clutched Captain Buttons to her chest, tears pricking her eyes. Another knock. Stronger. Her lip trembled. She wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. The house felt small, fragile, like paper against a storm. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Who are you? What do you want?" For a moment, silence. Then a deep voice through the door. "Emily." Her eyes widened. He knew her name. In the distance, the screech of tires cut through the night. Another car pulled into the street. Not black, not sleek. A battered sedan. Her mother. Laura stepped out, holding her purse close. She froze at the sight of the black cars, the men in suits, the figure at her porch. "Emily," she cried, dropping her bag, sprinting toward the house. The suited men moved instantly, blocking her path. "Get out of my way," she screamed, her voice raw with terror. "That's my daughter." From the porch, Vincent turned. His cold eyes met Laura's. For a beat, neither moved. The air was thick with fear and tension. Vincent raised a hand. His men stepped aside. Laura bolted up the steps, fumbling for her keys, rushing through the door. She grabbed Emily, pulling her into her arms. The little girl sobbed into her mother's chest. Laura turned back toward the shadowed figure outside. Her voice trembled with fury. "What do you want from us?" Vincent's gaze lingered on Emily. Something flickered in his expression, recognition, sorrow, memory. But his words were steady, cold. "She called me." The house felt too small for the fear pressing against its walls. Laura clutched Emily tightly, her chest rising and falling in short, panicked breaths. The warmth of her daughter's hair against her cheek steadied her, but only slightly. Through the thin glass of the door, the figure remained, still, patient, terrifying. The black cars hummed in the background, their engines never fully shutting off, like beasts waiting to pounce. Laura's voice shook as she whispered into Emily's ear. "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here. I won't let them take you." But the truth was written in her trembling hands. She had no power to stop them. Outside, Vincent stood motionless, his eyes on the silhouette of mother and child framed by the dim lamp inside. His men waited at a respectful distance, though none dared breathe too loudly. "She called me," he repeated under his breath, as though the words themselves would explain the magnetic pull that had dragged him here. But logic clawed at him. A mafia boss doesn't knock on suburban doors for a child's mistake. This was weakness, indulgence, dangerous. Still her voice. Emily. The way she'd said her name had pierced him. An arrow through armor he thought impenetrable. Laura's fear hardened into defiance. She set Emily down gently, crouching so her eyes met her daughter's. "Listen to me, Em," she whispered firmly. "Go to your room. Stay there. Don't come out until I say." Emily clutched captain buttons. Her wide eyes glistened. "But Mommy." "Now." Laura's tone was sharp, desperate. Emily nodded, her small legs carrying her down the hall. Though she kept looking back, her bears squeezed tight. Laura rose and faced the door. With shaking hands, she cracked it open just enough to meet Vincent's gaze. "What do you want with my daughter?" she demanded. Vincent studied her. Strong jaw, tired eyes. The kind of exhaustion carved into someone who had fought too many battles alone. "She called me," he said again, voice steady. Laura's anger flared. "She's a child. She doesn't know what she's doing. You had no right to bring all this." She gestured at the street, at the cars lining it like soldiers. A muscle ticked in Vincent's jaw. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, calmly, "I thought it was a threat." Laura blinked. "A threat?" "She's 8 years old." His gray eyes flickered, but only for a second. "Mistakes are rare in my world. Costly. Deadly. I don't believe in coincidences." "Well, maybe you should start," Laura snapped. "Because this is insane." The silence between them was heavy, charged. Laura's body shook with adrenaline, but she refused to step back. Finally, Vincent turned. "Keep her inside." He signaled to his men. "No one touches the house. No one leaves their post." Laura's heart pounded. "Wait, what does that mean?" "It means," Vincent said, without looking back, "until I'm sure this isn't a message meant for me. Your house is under my protection." Protection. The word rang in Laura's ears long after he descended the steps and slid into the back of the black car. Protection wasn't what she wanted from him. Protection was what he gave to his empire, his men, his bloody business. But the way he said it, calm, absolute, left her shaken. She shut the door quickly, locking it, bolting it, as though the thin pieces of metal could stop the weight of what had just invaded her world. Emily peeked out from the hallway, her bear's button eye glinting in the dim light. "Mommy." Her voice was soft, frightened. "Are they gone?" Laura forced a smile, crouching again to hold her daughter close. "They're outside, but they won't come in. I won't let them." "Why did they say my name?" Emily asked, her tiny voice cracking. Laura's throat tightened. She stroked her daughter's hair. "I don't know, baby, but I'll figure it out." Inside, though, fear gnawed at her. This wasn't a mistake you could erase with apologies. They had brushed against something far larger, far darker than she could comprehend. At his penthouse later that night, Vincent poured another drink, but his hand lingered at his glass instead of lifting it. His men debriefed him. The Carter house was ordinary. The woman worked long hours. The girl attended a public school. No ties to rivals. No connections to the underground. Then why? One man asked, his voice uncertain. Why would a little girl call you? Vincent didn't answer. Clouded their eyes. They knew better than to push. When they left, Vincent sat alone in the silence. For the first time in years, he wondered if fate had placed a mistake in his path, or a second chance. Back at the Carter home, Laura paced the floor long after Emily had fallen asleep, curled tightly around her bear. She kept peeking through the blinds. The black cars remained. Men in suits leaned against them, smoking, watching. They weren't going anywhere. Her mind raced. She thought of running, grabbing Emily, throwing some clothes into a bag, disappearing into the night. But where would she go? How could she outrun shadows that stretched across an entire city? Her chest tightened as she whispered to herself, "What did you get us into, Em?" But deep down, she knew the truth. This wasn't Emily's fault. Whatever this was, it had chosen them now. And in the darkness outside, Vincent sat in his car longer than he needed to, his gaze fixed on the faint light glowing from Emily's window. Something about that small house wouldn't let him leave. The following morning dawned gray and heavy, clouds sagging low as if the sky itself carried the weight pressing on the Carter home. Laura woke with a start on the couch, her neck stiff, her back aching from a restless night. The clock on the wall read 6:12 a.m. She blinked and listened. Engines. Still outside. She crept to the window and peeked through the blinds. The black cars hadn't moved. Men in suits rotated in shifts, some leaning casually against the hoods, others standing at sharp attention. They weren't hiding. They wanted her to see them. Her stomach churned. God, what do they want from us? She whispered under her breath. From down the hall, she heard soft footsteps. Emily appeared, her bear tucked under her arm, her hair messy from sleep. Mommy, Emily mumbled, rubbing her eyes. They're still here. Laura knelt, pulling her daughter into her arms. Yes, baby. But remember what I said? They can't come in. They're just watching. Emily leaned against her shoulder. I don't like it. I don't either, Laura admitted. She pressed a kiss to her daughter's hair, her own fear hidden beneath forced calm. By mid-morning, the uneasy stalemate broke. There was another knock. Not the heavy, commanding kind from last night, but a softer one, almost polite. Laura stiffened instantly, her heart hammering. She moved Emily behind her, then opened the door just a crack. Vincent stood there, alone this time. No men flanking him. No threat radiating from his presence, at least, not as overtly. His tailored suit was impeccable, his expression unreadable. We need to talk, he said simply. Laura's jaw tightened. We don't have anything to talk about. Yes, we do. His gaze flicked briefly toward the hall, where Emily peeked shyly before ducking back out of sight. His voice softened, almost imperceptibly, especially about her. Laura's stomach knotted. Stay away from my daughter. Vincent's lips pressed into a thin line. I don't want to hurt her. Or you. He paused, the words strange even to his own ears. But until I know why that call came to me, I can't walk away. Laura opened the door wider, anger flaring. She's a little girl. She doesn't know who you are. It was a mistake. A stupid, random mistake. Vincent's eyes hardened. There are no mistakes like that in my world. Someone put her up to it. Someone wanted me to hear her voice. And until I find out who, you're not safe. Laura's breath caught. He wasn't threatening. He was warning. But that didn't make it better. And you expect me to believe you're here to, what? Protect us. She spat. You terrify her. You terrify me. A flicker, the briefest, crossed Vincent's face. Hurt. No, something deeper, older. Before he could answer, Emily reappeared, clutching captain buttons, her small voice breaking the standoff. Are you going to take us away? She asked, her eyes wide, her tone trembling. Both adults froze. Vincent's gaze softened. He crouched slightly, lowering himself to her height, though he remained outside the threshold. His voice was quiet, almost tender. No, Piccolina, he said softly. No one's taking you anywhere. Emily studied him, as though searching his face for the truth. Then, surprising Laura, she stepped closer, still holding her bear like a shield. You sounded lonely on the phone, she whispered. The words pierced Vincent's chest. His throat tightened. No one spoke to him like that. Not his men, not his enemies, not anyone. Laura pulled Emily back protectively, her glare sharp. Go to your room, Em. But, now. Emily obeyed reluctantly, her small footsteps fading down the hall. Laura turned back to Vincent, her voice low and firm. Stay away from her. For a long moment, Vincent didn't move. Then he straightened, his mask sliding back into place. You don't understand, he said quietly. Someone will come for her. For both of you. My men stay until I find out who. Without waiting for her reply, he turned and walked back down the porch steps. The hours that followed blurred together. Vincent's men remained stationed outside, a silent wall of watchful eyes. Neighbors whispered, curtains twitched. Rumors spread like wildfire through the street. Laura felt trapped. She couldn't go to work, couldn't take Emily to school, couldn't step outside without the suffocating presence of those cars. By evening, the air inside the house was heavy with tension. Emily sat at the table, coloring absent-mindedly. Laura tried to cook, her hands shaking as she chopped vegetables. The sudden knock startled them both. Laura opened the door to find Vincent again, this time holding a bag of groceries. Her brow furrowed. What is this? You haven't left the house all day, Vincent said simply. You need food. Laura blinked, stunned. And what? You think that makes this okay? That bringing groceries makes you less of a, she cut herself off, her anger trembling against fear. Vincent set the bag down just inside the door. I don't expect thanks. I just don't want her to go hungry. His eyes flicked toward Emily, who peeked around the corner. Laura followed his gaze, her jaw tight. You stay away from her. Vincent didn't argue. He only nodded once and stepped back. That night, after Emily was tucked into bed, Laura sat in the dim living room, her head in her hands. Why wasn't he leaving? Why did his words, protection, danger, no coincidences, echo in her mind? And why, despite everything, did Emily seem less afraid of him than she was? Through the window, she caught sight of Vincent standing outside, not with his men, but alone by his car. He lit a cigarette, the ember glowing faintly in the dark. But his gaze wasn't on the street or the shadows. It was on the faint golden light spilling from Emily's window. For a man like him, it should have been nothing. A mistake. A nuisance. And yet, something bound him there. The next day, the tension had settled into a strange routine. The black cars remained, their presence so constant it almost blended into the background noise of the neighborhood. Almost. Laura tried to carry on as best she could, cooking, cleaning, distracting Emily with games and coloring. But every time she looked out the window, the sight of suited men standing guard made her stomach twist. Emily, however, seemed less shaken. Children adapt quickly. She had grown used to drawing pictures at the table with Captain Buttons beside her, occasionally sneaking peeks through the blinds to catch sight of the men outside. Once, she even waved shyly at one of them. To Laura's horror, the man gave her the smallest nod in return. That evening, Vincent returned. Not with groceries this time, but with silence. He stood at the porch, his presence heavy, waiting until Laura opened the door. Her expression was weary, defensive. What now? I need to come in, Vincent said. Laura's hands tightened on the doorframe. Absolutely not. Just for a moment. No men, no threats. Just me. Her eyes narrowed, searching his face for deception. He looked different tonight, tired, as though the weight of something unseen pressed on his shoulders. Against her better judgment, Laura opened the door wider. 5 minutes. Vincent stepped inside, the smallness of the home, contrasting sharply with the vast spaces he usually commanded. He glanced around, faded curtains, toys scattered in a corner, the faint smell of lavender detergent. It was ordinary, human, a life far from his own. Emily peeked around the corner, clutching her bear. Vincent's gaze softened. Hello, Emily. She shuffled forward shyly. Hi. Laura's hand rested protectively on her daughter's shoulder. But Emily surprised her by speaking again. Do you have kids? The question hit like a stone to the chest. Vincent's jaw clenched, his throat working before he forced the words out. I did. Laura stiffened. She hadn't expected honesty. What happened? Emily asked gently, her child's curiosity innocent, unfiltered. Vincent's eyes flickered with pain. She got sick, and I couldn't stop it. His voice grew rough. All the power in the world, and I couldn't save her. The silence that followed was heavy. Laura's anger softened slightly, though she fought to keep her guard up. Emily tilted her head. Did she have a teddy too? Vincent's lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Yes, a rabbit. She carried it everywhere. Emily nodded solemnly, as if she understood the gravity of what he said. She hugged Captain Buttons tighter. Laura swallowed hard, watching the exchange. She had expected menace, intimidation, not this quiet vulnerability. Why are you telling her this? Laura asked cautiously. Vincent's gaze flicked to her. Because she asked. His eyes lingered on Emily. And because no one has asked me in a long time. Later that night, after Emily was asleep, Laura sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, her nerves frayed. She wasn't sure why she let him stay, why she hadn't slammed the door and locked it. Vincent sat across from her, uninvited but not unwelcome. For the first time, he seemed less like a mafia boss and more like a man carrying invisible scars. You lost someone too, he said suddenly, his gray eyes sharp. Laura's breath caught. What? You carry it, Vincent continued. In your eyes. In the way you protect her. Like the world already took too much. Laura looked away, her throat tight. She hated that he saw through her so easily. My husband, she admitted quietly. He left. Walked out when Emily was 2. No explanation, no goodbye. Just gone. Vincent leaned back, studying her. That's worse than death. At least death doesn't choose to leave you. Laura's eyes burned. She hated the truth in his words. He left us with nothing, she continued, her voice trembling. I worked double shifts just to keep the lights on. Emily, she deserves so much more than this. Her hand clenched around the mug, knuckles white. So don't stand there and tell me you're protecting us when men like you are. The reason mothers have to live in fear. Vincent didn't flinch at the accusation. He let her words hang in the air before answering quietly. You're right. Men like me destroy lives. His voice was heavy, haunted. But for once, I don't want to destroy. Not here. Not with her. Laura stared at him, torn between fury and confusion. His contradictions made no sense. You terrify me, she admitted finally. I terrify myself, he said simply. The next morning, Emily found something on the porch, a small stuffed rabbit. Its fur worn but clean, its button I stitched carefully. A gift. She squealed softly and hugged it tight. Mommy, look. Laura's chest tightened. She knew instantly where it came from. She wanted to throw it away, to reject the gesture outright. But when she saw the joy on Emily's face, her resolve cracked. Can I keep it? Emily asked hopefully. Laura hesitated. Then, softly, yes, baby. You can keep it. From the car parked across the street, Vincent watched as Emily carried the rabbit inside. Her laughter faint but audible. For the first time in years, he allowed himself the smallest, most fragile smile. The stuffed rabbit quickly became Emily's new companion. She named it Rosie, and from the moment she held it in her arms, she carried it everywhere alongside Captain Buttons. Laura tried not to show how unsettled it made her feel, knowing where the toy had come from. But Emily's happiness was undeniable, and happiness was so rare in their small house that Laura couldn't bear to take it away. Still, every time Emily hugged Rosie, Laura felt the invisible thread pulling them closer. To the man parked across the street. It was Saturday afternoon when Emily's courage surprised everyone. The sun was warm, the air soft with the scent of blooming lilacs from a neighbor's yard. Laura was folding laundry in the living room, trying to drown her restless thoughts in routine. Emily stood at the window, watching the black cars as she often did. But this time, she didn't just watch. She turned suddenly, clutching Rosie in one hand and Captain Buttons in the other. I'm going outside, she announced. Laura's head snapped up. Absolutely not. Mommy, please, Emily pleaded. They're always out there. What if they're nice? What if they're bored too? Emily. But the little girl had already slipped her shoes on, darting toward the door before Laura could stop her. Emily, Laura cried, rushing after her. But by the time she reached the porch, Emily was already halfway across the lawn. Vincent, standing near his car, stiffened when he saw the small figure approaching. His men shifted uneasily, glancing to him for direction. Emily stopped in front of him, tilting her head back to meet his gaze. "Hi," she said simply, clutching both stuffed animals like soldiers in her army. Vincent blinked, uncharacteristically thrown off balance. "Hello. You gave me Rosie, didn't you?" she asked. He hesitated, then nodded once. Emily's face lit up. "Thank you. She likes Captain Buttons. They're friends now." Vincent's lips twitched. "I'm glad." Laura appeared at the edge of the porch, her voice sharp with panic. "Emily, come back here." But Emily Emily's shoulder. Inside. Now. Emily pouted but obeyed, glancing back at Vincent as she was led away. "I'll show you next time," she called. Vincent stood there long after she disappeared, the echo of her promise lingering like sunlight in his chest. That evening, Laura confronted him. She marched across the lawn, her voice low but fierce. "Stop talking to her," she hissed. "She's a child. She doesn't understand who you are, what you've done." Vincent didn't flinch. "And what do you think I've done?" Laura's eyes burned. "Everything. You don't get to stand there with your suits and your men and act like you're some savior. You're poison." For a long moment, they glared at each other. But then Vincent's gaze softened. "Maybe," he admitted. "But your daughter doesn't see poison. She sees a man who needs to smile." Laura's throat tightened. She hated that his words made her waver. "Stay away from her heart," she whispered. "You don't get to touch that part of her." Vincent didn't argue. He only nodded once, his expression unreadable. The days blurred into a strange rhythm. Vincent's men remained posted, but the atmosphere shifted. They no longer felt like predators at the edge of Laura's world, but guardians, silent, steady, waiting. Emily, undeterred by her mother's warnings, grew bolder. She began leaving small drawings on the porch, stick figures of herself. Her mom, Captain Buttons, Rosie, and sometimes a tall man in a suit with a smile. Laura tried to stop her, but Emily always found a way. One morning, Vincent found a drawing tucked under the windshield wiper of his car. He stood there, staring at the crooked lines and bright colors. His men watched nervously, unsure of his reaction. But instead of tearing it up, Vincent carefully folded the paper and slipped it into his coat pocket. One evening, a thunderstorm rolled through, rain pounding the streets, lightning flashing across the sky. The power flickered in the Carter home, plunging the rooms into darkness. Emily squealed and clutched both her stuffed animals tightly. "Mommy, the lights are gone." Laura grabbed a flashlight, her heart racing with frustration. "It's okay, baby. It's just a storm." A sudden knock on the door startled her. She opened it to find Vincent, rain dripping from his coat. "The transformer's out," he said. "Your block won't have power until morning." He held up a lantern, its warm glow cutting through the storm. "Take this." Laura hesitated, then accepted it reluctantly. "Thank you." Emily peeked from behind her, her face lighting up at the sight of him. "Come inside. It's scary in here." "Emily," Laura began, but the little girl tugged harder. "Please, Mommy." Vincent met Laura's eyes, silent. The storm roared around them. Finally, with a heavy sigh, Laura stepped aside. Vincent entered the small house for the first time, lantern in hand. They sat together in the dim glow, the storm raging outside. Emily nestled between them, clutching her stuffed animals, telling stories about Captain Buttons and Rosie as though they were real. For the first time, Vincent laughed, a soft, genuine laugh that startled even him. Laura froze, watching the sound transform his face. For a fleeting moment, he didn't look like the Mafia boss who had surrounded her house. He looked like a man, tired, scarred, but human. And for the first time, she wondered if her daughter saw something she couldn't. The storm passed, but its echo lingered. For a few fleeting hours, the Carter house had been a shelter, laughter filling the dim glow of a lantern. Emily's stories weaving light into shadows. But dawn brought the world back. Hard, cold, unforgiving. The first crack came that morning. Laura was on the porch, sipping coffee from her chipped mug, when she noticed two men in suits across the street whispering to each other. One pointed toward her house, the other scribbled something in a small notebook. Her stomach knotted. She stormed across the lawn, anger overriding fear. "What are you writing about my house?" she demanded. The men stiffened. One looked guilty, the other indifferent. "Routine," one muttered. "Don't lie to me." Before they could answer, Vincent appeared, his presence commanding the space instantly. "What's going on?" he asked, voice low. Laura spun toward him, her eyes blazing. "They're writing things down. About us. About my daughter. Don't you dare tell me this is protection. This is surveillance." Vincent's jaw tightened. He turned to his men. "Show me." They hesitated, then reluctantly handed over the notebook. Vincent flipped it open. Inside were crude sketches, the layout of her house. The windows, notes about entry points. Laura's blood ran cold. Her voice trembled, but her rage sharpened it into steel. "You're not protecting us. You're planning for us. Like we're pieces in one of your games." Vincent's face hardened. "This isn't what it looks like." "It looks exactly like what it is," Laura snapped. "Control. You've invaded our lives, Vincent. My daughter is drawing you pictures, trusting you. And all this time you're treating us like assets." Emily had come to the doorway, her small face pale. "Mommy." Laura pulled her daughter close. Inside, Emily's wide eyes flicked between her mother and Vincent, confusion and hurt swirling in them. "Now," Laura insisted, ushering her back in. Vincent closed the notebook slowly, his men shifting nervously under his silence. "This wasn't ordered by me," he said finally. His voice was calm, but dangerous. "Someone disobeyed." Laura's laugh was bitter, hollow. "Oh, and that's supposed to make me feel better? That even you can't control your empire? Then what's stopping them from deciding my daughter's just another liability to erase?" For the first time, Vincent had no answer. That night, the silence inside the house was unbearable. Emily lay awake, clutching both Rosie and Captain Buttons. Her little body curled tight. "Mommy," she whispered in the dark, "did he lie to us?" Laura smoothed her daughter's hair, her heart breaking at the question. "Yes, baby. Men like him always lie. But he laughed with us," Emily said, her voice trembling. "He smiled. I thought he was our friend." Laura's throat tightened. She wished she could erase the disappointment from her daughter's voice. Sometimes people pretend to be things they're not. Tears slid down Emily's cheeks. She buried her face in her hair, muffling her sobs. Laura held her close, her own tears falling silently into the dark. Across the street, Vincent stood by his car, the notebook in his hand. He had confronted the men responsible, fury blazing. But punishing them didn't erase the damage. Laura's words cut deeper than any enemy's blade. "Men like you always lie." He poured himself into anger that night, into the comfort of control. Deals to finalize, rivals to crush. He told himself to let go, to walk away. But when he closed his eyes, all he saw was Emily's face. Disappointed, betrayed. And for the first time in years, Vincent Moretti felt powerless. The next day, Laura made her decision. She packed a small bag for Emily, shoving clothes into it with trembling hands. "We're leaving," she whispered to herself. "I don't care if we have to sleep in the car. We're leaving." Emily clutched Rosie, her eyes wide. "But what about him?" Laura froze. She wanted to scream. "He's not ours, Emily. He's not safe." But when she looked at her daughter's hopeful little face, the words died in her throat. Instead, she whispered, "He doesn't belong to us. And we don't belong to him." She zipped the bag shut, her heart heavy. But the city had other plans. That evening, as Laura tried to slip Emily into the car, headlights flared at the end of the street. Not black cars. Different ones. Windows tinted, engines loud. Men stepped out. Rougher, colder, not Vincent's men. Laura's heart dropped. "Rivals." "Mommy," Emily whispered, her grip tightening on Rosie. The men moved quickly, surrounding the car. One yanked the door open. "Come with us," he sneered. "The boss wants leverage." Laura screamed, clutching Emily. Before they could drag them away, gunfire split the night. Vincent's men erupted from the shadows, bullets slicing through the street. The rival crew scattered, some falling, others retreating. Vincent himself appeared in the chaos, his coat flaring, his gun steady. His eyes locked on Laura and Emily, his expression fierce, protective, desperate. Laura's heart thundered as he pulled them both to safety. But instead of gratitude, her voice shook with rage. "This is your fault," she screamed at him as the smoke cleared. "They came because of you." Emily clung to Vincent, sobbing. Laura saw it. Her worst fear, her daughter seeking comfort in the very man she wanted her to fear. Something shattered in her then. "Stay away from us," she spat, her voice breaking. "Do you hear me? Stay away." For once, Vincent didn't argue. He only stood there, his chest heaving. Emily's cries echoing in his ears as Laura dragged her back inside. And as the door slammed shut between them, Vincent felt the truth hit him harder than any bullet ever could. He had lost them. The house felt like a prison. For 3 days, Laura didn't let Emily outside. Curtains stayed drawn, doors locked, lights dimmed at night. She cooked meals she barely touched, cleaned things that didn't need cleaning, and whispered prayers into the silence. Emily noticed. Children always notice. "Mommy," she asked on the second night, her small voice quivering, "are we hiding?" Laura forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We're just being careful, sweetheart." Emily hugged Rosie tighter, her lower lip trembling. "Is he gone?" Laura's chest tightened. "Yes," she lied. "He's gone." But every night, when the house fell silent, Laura would peek through the curtains. Across the street, she'd see a figure standing in the shadows. Not close, not threatening. Just there. Always there. Vincent. For Vincent, the days were longer than any battlefield. He stayed back, further than usual, leaving no men near the house. No notebooks, no surveillance. Just him. Alone. He didn't eat much. Didn't sleep. The nights bled into mornings as he stood guard from afar. Cigar smoke curling into the cold air. His empire buzzed with demands, shipments, rivals, scores to settle, but he ignored them all. He knew he was losing control, and for once, he didn't care. The only thing he couldn't ignore was the memory of Emily's small hand clutching his coat, her voice pleading, "Don't go," and Laura's voice cutting through like glass, "Stay away from us." Two truths colliding, and he couldn't live with either. On the fourth day, Emily made her own choice. She waited until her mom was in the shower, then slipped on her sneakers. Rosie tucked under her arm. Quiet as a whisper, she opened the front door and padded down the street. Vincent almost didn't believe it when he saw her coming. She stopped a few feet away, her tiny shoes splashing in the puddles from yesterday's rain. Her chin lifted bravely, though her eyes shimmered. "You didn't go," she said softly. "No," Vincent answered, his voice rougher than he intended. "I didn't." Emily's lower lip quivered. "Mommy says you're bad." Vincent froze. "She says men like you hurt people, that you make us unsafe." Her voice wobbled. "But you didn't let those men take us. You saved us." Vincent swallowed hard, kneeling to meet her gaze. "Your mother's right," he said finally. "I have hurt people. I've done things I can't take back." Emily hugged Rosie tighter. "Then why did you save me?" His chest ached. "Because you remind me of someone I loved, someone I lost, and because I couldn't let you be hurt too." Emily studied him with solemn eyes far older than her years. Then, slowly, she stepped closer and pressed Rosie into his hands. "She makes people smile," Emily whispered. "She can help you." Vincent's breath caught. His fingers trembled as he closed them around the soft toy. "Emily." Laura's voice tore through the street. She ran toward them, panic in every step. She grabbed her daughter, pulling her close, her eyes blazing at Vincent. "How dare you?" "Mommy," Emily interrupted, her voice desperate. "He didn't lie. He didn't leave." Laura froze. Emily's cheeks were wet now, tears falling fast. "He's sad, Mommy. Like us. But he saved us. Doesn't that mean something?" The street went still. Rain dripped from rooftops. A dog barked in the distance. Laura looked at Vincent, really looked. His face wasn't the mask of a mafia boss. It was a man stripped bare, holding a child's toy like it was his last lifeline. For the first time, she saw not poison, but pain. Not just control, but loneliness. And against her will, her heart cracked open. That night, after Emily fell asleep, Laura sat alone at the kitchen table. Her hands shook as she stared at Rosie's twin, Captain Buttons, resting in Emily's bed. She thought of the storm night, of Vincent's laugh, of the way Emily's drawings had always included him. Her chest tightened. She hated him. She needed him. Both were true, and she knew she couldn't keep living in the half-light of fear and longing. "Vincent," 2. Faced his choice. Back at his mansion, his men brought reports, warnings, threats from rival families. But he waved them off. Instead, he sat at his desk with Rosie propped before him, staring at the little stuffed rabbit like it held the answers. He thought of Sophia. He thought of Emily. He thought of Laura's fire, her defiance, the way she looked at him with both hatred and something dangerously close to hope. His empire could swallow him whole, or he could risk everything, reputation, power, even his life, for the chance to be something else. A protector, a father, a man who remembered how to smile. His fists clenched, his decision solidified. The following evening, he came back to the Carter house. Alone. No men, no cars. Vincent said. For a long moment, they stood in silence, the air thick with everything unsaid. Then Vincent reached into his coat and held out Rosie. She wanted you to have her back, he said softly. But I needed her for a little while. Laura's throat tightened as she took the toy. Their fingers brushed, and something electric passed between them. Fragile, terrifying, undeniable. Vincent's voice dropped. I don't want to be your enemy, or your shadow, but I don't know how to be anything else. Laura's eyes glistened. Then maybe. Her voice broke. Maybe you should try. The night Vincent returned Rosie, Laura barely slept. She lay awake listening to the sound of Emily's soft breathing, clutching the stuffed rabbit to her chest. Her heart warred with itself, torn between fear and something she hadn't dared feel in years, hope. In the silence, she whispered a single question to the dark ceiling above. Can people like him ever change? The answer came sooner than she expected. 3 nights later, the quiet street erupted in chaos once more. Rival cars roared in, headlights slicing through the dark, men spilling out with weapons drawn. Laura bolted upright in bed, terror surging through her. Emily whimpered in her sleep, clutching captain buttons. This time, there were no guards stationed nearby. No black cars waiting in the shadows. Just Vincent. He appeared from the darkness like a storm himself. Gunfire cracking as he single-handedly pushed back the intruders. His coat whipped with each movement, his face carved with fury. Laura held Emily close in the doorway, heart pounding, watching the impossible unfold. The most feared man in the city risking his life. Not for power, not for reputation, but for them. When the last rival fled, tires screeching into the night, Vincent lowered his gun. His shoulders heaved, his chest soaked in sweat and rain. Then his eyes found hers. He crossed the street slowly, carefully, like a man approaching a fragile flame he didn't want to extinguish. Laura clutched Emily tighter, torn between slamming the door and running to him. Vincent stopped at the bottom step, his voice low, steady, but trembling at the edges. No more shadows. No more guards. Just me. He swallowed. If you want me gone, I'll go. But if you'll let me stay. His voice faltered. For once, Vincent Moretti, the man who commanded empires, struggled for words. Then I'll spend the rest of my life learning how to be the kind of man your daughter already thinks I am. Silence hung heavy between them, broken only by Emily's small voice. Mommy, she whispered. He remembered how to smile. Laura looked down at her daughter's wide, hopeful eyes, then back at Vincent. And for the first time, she let her walls crumble. Come in, she whispered. The weeks that followed weren't easy. The city didn't stop being dangerous. Vincent's enemies didn't vanish. Laura didn't magically forget the fear. But change came slowly, quietly, in the spaces between. Breakfast shared at the small kitchen table. Emily teaching Vincent silly songs. Vincent fixing the squeaky back door with his own hands. Instead of sending someone else, Laura noticed the small things. The way he took his shoes off at the door without being asked. How he never raised his voice in the house. How he listened when Emily spoke as though her words were the most important in the world. And one evening, when Vincent laughed so hard he nearly dropped a plate of spaghetti Emily had made him, Laura realized something had shifted. He wasn't just visiting anymore. He was home. But the true test came on a quiet Sunday. They were in the park, Emily chasing butterflies with Rosie tucked under her arm. Vincent sat on the bench beside Laura, the afternoon sun warm on their faces. He reached into his pocket and handed her a folded piece of paper. Laura frowned, unfolding it carefully. It was Emily's old drawing, The one with the stick figures. Herself. Her mom, Captain Buttons, Rosie, and a tall man in a suit, smiling. Vincent's voice was quiet. She drew this before I ever earned it. Before I deserved it. And I realized, I don't want to live a life where I'm not trying to. Laura's eyes burned as she looked at him. I can't promise safety, he whispered. But I can promise I'll never leave. Not again. Not like I lost Sophia. His voice cracked. I don't know if I'm worthy of it, Laura. But I want this. I want us. Her throat tightened, but she didn't look away. Instead, she reached for his hand. Then stop trying to be worthy, she said softly. Just be here. That's all Emily and I ever needed. His fingers closed around hers, trembling. And for the first time in years, Vincent Moretti smiled. That night, as they tucked Emily into bed, she yawned and whispered, "We're safe now, right?" Vincent smoothed her hair, his voice low and steady. "Yes, Piccolina. You're safe." Laura watched the exchange, her heart swelling, and realized she believed him. For the first time, safety didn't mean walls or guards or silence. Safety meant belonging. It meant love. The Carter house still creaked. The neighborhood still whispered. The world outside still carried its dangers. But inside, there was laughter again. There was warmth. There was a family, stitched together from loss, mistakes, and second chances. A little girl's mistake had brought the Mafia boss to her door. But love had kept him there.